Since the start of 2025, no team in the Championship has picked up more points than Coventry have. They're on an absolutely sublime run of form right now, and is it time that a few people owe Frank Lampard a bit of an apology? Let's dive into Coventry in today's video and look at the wider race for the top six as well. I think we can all agree that the top four in the Championship are all pretty well established, but those two final playoff spots are pretty open right now. Coventry are certainly making the case that they're going to be one of the sides finishing in the top six come the end of the season, but there's certainly a decent amount of competition going for those last two places. If you had to put your money on the line right now, who are you saying makes the playoffs come the end of the season? Let me know down below. So following Coventry's dramatic 3-2 triumph against Oxford over the weekend, for the first time this season they now find themselves in the top six. They're up in 5th in the Championship, 53 points accumulated from their first 35 matches. Like we were sort of saying before, I think we can all agree the top four is pretty well established, but these last two playoff spots are still very open. West Brom got a decent point over the weekend away at Leeds. Blackburn scored late on to get back into that game against Norwich. Borough, after being on a really bad run of form, have turned a bit of a corner recently, having won back-to-back matches. Bristol City is still to play on Tuesday, and they could go level on 52 points with West Brom if they beat Millwall in that game. And I certainly don't think you can totally discount Watford, and definitely not Norwich either. Going down a little bit further than that, the likes of Millwall, Sheff Wednesday, QPR Preston, I think you're getting... I think it'll be tough for them to make the top six from this point. But you never know. You know, Millwall have been on a good run recently and they've got that game in hand on the teams above them as well. So those last two spots are very open, but Coventry right now are definitely looking like one of the favourites to make the top six, given the run of form they've been on recently. Now, prior to Lampard being hired, this was the state of affairs at Coventry and the sort of job he was walking into. Mark Robins' side were sat 17th in the Championship, but averaging 1 point per game, and there was no question about it. Coventry had fallen far below expectations in the first few months of the season. It had been a bit of a trend with Coventry in recent years to start the season quite slowly and then grow into the year. And something you can definitely argue in fairness to Robins, despite Coventry not getting those results at the start of the season, you know, the club, they were making bad individual mistakes around that time and things just weren't fully clicking for them. Despite that, their underlying numbers were still among some of the best in the Championship. They were just incredibly wasteful in the final third and they were too error-prone at the back. However, since Frank Lampard has taken over at Coventry, this is what the Championship table looks like. Only Sheffield United and Leeds have accumulated more points than Coventry have since Lampard's been in that job. In his first 18 league matches, he's won 11 of them, 3 draws, 4 losses. They're not conceding anywhere near as many goals as they were under Robins at the start of the season, and they've been hitting the back of the net on a much more consistent basis. You know, once again, since Lampard came in, only Leeds have scored more goals than Coventry have, so the momentum really seems to be with them right now. Since the turn of the year in January, only Leeds have accumulated as many points as Coventry have. 25 points they've taken from 11 league matches during this calendar year. It's an absolutely superb run of form, 8 wins from their last 11. Do some people owe Frank Lampard a bit of an apology because it was seen as a big risk by Coventry at the time to part ways with a hugely beloved character at the club in Mark Robins and appoint someone like Frank Lampard, whose managerial reputation has definitely taken a hit over these last few years. But in fairness to Lampard, and something that I did say at the time when Coventry actually went ahead and appointed him, he's always done well, or at least met expectations in the first season that he's been at each football club. You know, his first and only season at Derby, got them into the playoffs, had them 1 game away from playing in the Premier League. They obviously lost the final. His first season at Chelsea, met expectations, got that club into the top 4 despite a transfer ban. His first season at Everton, he kept them afloat in the Premier League despite coming into a really tough relegation battle there. But ignore that second stint at Chelsea because that was just a bit of a disaster. Where Lampard has tended to run into most of his problems as a manager is later down the line into his second season at a club. Stereotypically, that's when things have started to unravel for him, but as we're seeing with Coventry now, as we saw at Derby, Chelsea and Everton previously, he tends to be quite good as an impact manager. You can see here, these are Coventry's season results so far, and prior to Lampard being hired, Coventry had only won back-to-back games once in the Championship under Mark Robins this season. So this level of consistency that we've got from Coventry recently was unheard of really in the opening months of the season. They just couldn't buy any consistency in these opening months to save their lives, could they? Now, from a Coventry perspective, their upcoming fixtures will be absolutely crucial for them in not just determining where they finish this season, but in determining who finishes in the top two. This run of fixtures that they've got here from sort of mid-March to early April is going to be so telling for a lot of things at the top end of the Championship. So they've got 3 consecutive games against Sunderland, Sheffield United and Burnley. Form Coventry in right now, you definitely fancy them in at least a couple of those fixtures. Now, it is worth stressing the last time Coventry played a side in the top 4 of the Championship, that was obviously against Leeds in February. Leeds absolutely bossed that game, you know. Could have been more than 2-0. They created an abundance of chances and Coventry couldn't quite deal with them. Whether or not we'll get the same sort of thing happening in these 3 matches though, I'm not so sure. I think Coventry will give all 3 of them a really good run for their money. Before they've got those 3 games, they've got 2 games to come against Stoke and Derby. With the form Coventry are in right now, I think most people would fancy them to take maximum points from those 2 matches. And it really goes back to what I was saying at the start of the video as well. Coventry's underlying numbers do rank as some of the best in the Championship. Now, it is worth stressing these aren't just since Lampard came in either. Even when they were falling far below expectations under Mark Robins, Coventry was still one of the best clubs in the Championship for chance creation. That's continued under Lampard and even has improved actually. For the XG numbers so far this season, only Leeds have created more chances, high quality chances that is, than Coventry have. For shots on target this season, only Middlesbrough and Leeds are above Coventry. This paints a little bit of a picture. They have been one of the most wasteful teams in the Championship, but a lot of those numbers coming from the opening months of the season under Mark Robins, where they were getting in some really good positions but just weren't taking their chances. They have been a lot more clinical in recent weeks. And even at the opposite end of the pitch, you wouldn't associate Coventry with being a sort of watertight defence this season, but in terms of limiting the opposition to not that many chances, they've actually been fairly decent from that side of things this season. They've been the 7th best club in the Championship for limiting the XG to the opposition, with only West Brom, Sunderland, Millwall, Sheffield United, Burnley and Leeds having better numbers than Coventry in that regard. Across the entire season, Coventry have currently averaged 1.51 points per game, and if projected over an entire season, that would see them finishing the season with around about 70 points. But the run of form they've been on recently, I wouldn't be surprised if that's a little bit higher, to be honest with you. What we've been saying for a few weeks now is that the threshold for getting into the top 6 this season looks like it's going to be pretty low. For the past couple of months, the consistency from all of the Championship clubs from sort of 5th downwards has been really up and down, but Coventry could really start to drag that points barrier up if they can continue this run of form. And if they do keep on with this fantastic winning streak, it maybe means that there's only one more playoff spot to play for, which will be the 6th place. But Coventry fans, I'd love to get your verdict on what you've made of these recent weeks. What's the vibe around the club right now? And how you're feeling about Frank Lampard. Well guys, that will now wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and get your thoughts in the comments down below on Lampard and Coventry and the top 6 race in general. Apart from that though guys, thank you very much for tuning in and I'll see you all in the next one.